On Tech News Today, Instagram on the rise, premium TV on the decline, and AT&T wants to tear up your contract. All that and more coming up.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
It's Tuesday, January 21st, 2014, and this is Tech News Today. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Mike Elgin.
I'm Sarah Lane.
Jason Allen. There we go.
Thank you, Jason. Tech News Today explores the top tech news in 30 minutes or less. Sarah, what's your favorite social network?
Oh, we're getting right into that. Easily, that's Twitter, because it's the social network that I get the most information out of. I feel that it's a tool for work and also a place for me to just say stupid stuff sometimes.
It's great for that as well. It's great for event television, like football games.
Very much so. Yeah, I went a little crazy on Sunday.
I'm a bit of a Google Plus freak. I automatically post all my Google Plus stuff to Twitter, and so since I started doing that, my Twitter following has actually been better because it's consistent stuff. The link goes back to Google Plus, and so I think it works fantastic. However, neither Twitter nor Google Plus is the largest social network these days. Turns out that, it's not the fastest growing. The fastest growing is actually Instagram, not Pinterest, as we heard late last year, at least according to research by the Global Web Index published today. The site has grown by about 23% in the last 6 months. And of course, it's not the biggest. The biggest social networks are Facebook, YouTube, Google+, Twitter, and LinkedIn, in that order. And to me, the shocker that jumped out from the survey is that Google's Orkut is in the top 10. It's the #9 biggest social network. It's even bigger than Yahoo's Tumblr. That shocked me.
Yeah, really. Wait, in what place is it growing exactly?
I have
Brazil? Wasn't that where Orkut still thrives?
Yeah, Brazil and India, I think, to a lesser extent. In any event, another stunner is that something like 2/3 of users for social networks use mobile devices now. That's way up from last year's reports. With us today to talk about all this is Jason Mander, who is head of trends at Global Web Index, and he's in fact the author of the study. Jason is Skyping in from London. Thank you for joining us, Jason.
No problem at all.
So is it true? Does Orkut still exist?
It certainly does. We've had quite a lot of people saying, what the heck, we didn't expect Orkut to feature at all. Actually, if you look at it on a country-by-country basis, it is, as you said, Brazil and India that are the reasons. We're finding over 50% of the internet audiences in those two markets are on Orkut, and about 10 to 15% in both of them are actively using the site each month. The rest of the world, it's much lower, so it really is those two markets that are driving things.
One of the things that's interesting about the study, and it's one of the difficulties for analysts like yourself, is that it's hard to differentiate between whether two properties are one social network or two social networks. For example, of course, Facebook owns Instagram, and I'm sure there's enormous crossover between the two. Google owns YouTube, and it also owns Orkut. If you look at YouTube and Orkut, it's clear that Google is integrating YouTube and Google Plus together, whereas they're not apparently integrating Orkut in any way that I'm aware of. So how do you decide when two services are in fact one? At what point does Instagram become actually part of Facebook, or at what point does YouTube become part of Google Plus?
It's a tricky question. When we survey our respondents, we ask them to make very clear decisions about which of the sites they're using. So they'll be presented with a list, and things like Instagram and Facebook will be separate. So it's their perception, really, of what they're using. Even though all of us know that they're sort of merging together, for the users that we're talking about on the streets across the world, they're still separate entities, and I think they will be for some time yet.
Now, you reported an astonishing connection between microblogging and the use of tablets. I think you reported 44% penetration. Is that as unusual or unexpected as it sounds?
Well, we're looking at, when we talk about microblogging, for us, active users who are people who are using them on a monthly basis. We're not necessarily saying that tablet users are on there every day or even multiple times a day doing it, but certainly on a monthly basis, that's the sort of figure that we're looking at the moment.
You know, as Mike mentions, Facebook and Instagram, in many cases, they're sort of blurred lines, as in, are they one company? Are they two different entities? And the cross-posting, if you start at Instagram and cross-post to Facebook, can be a little bit odd because you've got people who are liking the photo that you liked on Instagram, but it's on your Facebook page. When you see numbers like Facebook is shrinking, 3% isn't a huge drop, but still maybe waning in popularity. How does it change what Facebook has to do in the future if Instagram is really what's on the rise?
I mean, I think that taps into quite an important issue. It's very easy to make headlines about Facebook declining, and a lot of other people have, in fact. But I mean, Facebook is just integrating so many other things into its domain that actually, even though the headline figures for the site might be down, when you look at its reach across other platforms, it's really still quite phenomenal. And also, we've seen strong growth for the Facebook Messenger app. So while people might be using the main network slightly less frequently, there's still a growing appetite for the type of instant communication that Messenger apps can give.
Jason, I've noticed an interesting divergence between the trend lines for Google and for Facebook. For example, Google seems to be hell-bent on integrating everything inside, all the Google properties into, and if you follow those trend lines, you end up with one Google product called Google Plus that includes search and YouTube and Gmail and so on. And if you look at Facebook, they're actually doing the opposite. They seem to be spinning out different aspects of Facebook into individual apps, and they want you to use them separately. Is this a trend that is real? Do you really see them going in that direction? And who has a better strategy?
I mean, I think it's important to note that Google Plus did post growth during the period that this report was looking at. It has added active users in the last 6 months. But it's still some way behind Facebook, and I think there's a general trend of people becoming a little bit tired or a little bit bored of the big established social platforms, hence why we've seen large growth for things like Instagram and for Vine and for Pinterest to a lesser extent. So I think Facebook's strategy, even though, as I said, it's very easy to make headlines about them declining, is actually working pretty well for them. And actually disassociating things like Instagram from Facebook could work in their favor.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much for joining us late in the evening in London. You can find,
no problem.
Yeah, thank you. You can find Jason's work at globalwebindex.net. Thanks again. So, Sarah, it sounds like some phone company is getting pretty serious about television.
Yeah, so Intel's OnQ TV service is actually going somewhere, and that is to Verizon. Verizon announced today that it's acquiring Intel Media, that's a group of cloud TV assets that includes OnQ, and which puts Verizon in direct competition with former partner Comcast. Verizon is expected to integrate OnQ with its Fios fiber optic networks and deliver over-the-top TV to any device. OnQ is designed to offer both live TV and on-demand programming. What's interesting is that we first heard about OnQ back in 2012. It sounded very interesting, but there was a lot of head scratching saying, well, how is Intel going to win at this game? You know, everybody wants to do some sort of a alternative set-top box. What does it all mean? Kind of considered a failure, never really got off the ground. This deal is apparently in the range of $500 million. Neither company is saying exactly how much, but we first heard whispers of this back in November, so not a huge surprise, although Verizon's Q4 earnings are today, and it does lead some analysts to say this is an interesting shift for the company. I wonder if this is also based the timing of it to deflect some bad news, possibly for their handset division.
Well, one of the interesting things about this, and you mentioned that there was a lot of chatter about this deal last year. Last year was actually a pretty aggressive year for Verizon to go after TV, and it seems to me that they have a serious vision that's associated with the holy grail of television on the internet, which is live television. Who's going to be able to provide live TV? There's a football game on, there's the Oscars are on or something. Turn on, watch it on some streaming service. Who's going to do that? And it sounds like Verizon is the one who wants to do that. For example, last year they acquired Uplink. They also acquired a company called Edgecast. Both of those companies are optimized around providing live streaming service. Now, obviously, they're going to provide, sort of the equivalent of TiVo, sort of delayed programming. They're going to provide video on demand.
Sure.
Right? That's the easy part.
You got to have search and discovery all baked in there too.
Exactly. The hard part is the live stuff, and all of it requires some Hollywood deals. And this is where Intel failed. They failed to get, according to reports, they failed to get the deals with Hollywood studios and content creators. And I always pictured a bunch of Intel, engineers with pocket protectors and black shoes and short sleeve shirts going to Hollywood to have lunch. But I don't know how Verizon's going to get those deals either. Everybody wants to have those kinds of deals with Hollywood. Apple's had mediocre success. Hardly anybody else has. So I just don't, that's the part that I don't see happening yet, which is how does Verizon actually get the content?
Well, I mean, I think with their Fios division, I think it's, what, 5 million paying subscribers, which is very much dwarfed by the mobile division, which I think is more like 25 million. And if Verizon, you say, okay, well, what do we do to get more customers? So this may not be the final answer for Verizon, but I can see that they have a clear strategy. You know, they're buying companies, they're going to help them with TV offerings. Live TV, sure. I think really more emphasis is on in the on-demand sector, just because more and more people have options when it comes to that. So they've got a vision.
Yeah, they
whether
do.
It's a good one or not, it sort of remains to be seen.
Right, and whether they can do it or not remains to be seen. So, but I'm glad they're doing it. I'm glad somebody is trying to make this happen. Ultimately, what everybody wants is to be able to watch live television over the internet, to be able to watch any TV show or any movie that's ever appeared anywhere at any time.
And I don't think that's asking too much. I just want to see anything that I've ever wanted to see at any time when I'm in the mood.
Why not?
And I don't want to pay too much.
It's out there. Why can't we watch it? Come on. Otherwise, they're just creating artificial scarcity. Well, speaking of TV over the internet, new research reveals how quickly viewers are moving from premium TV to online streaming and video content, which is steadily but not really that fast. NPD Group found a 6% drop in subscriptions to HBO, Showtime, and other premium TV channels in the last 2 years, with a 4% rise in subscription video on demand service, including Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu Plus, those kinds of offerings. Now, this is a cord shaving, I think they call it, when you sort of cut back on your premium subscriptions to save money and substitute in online streaming sources of content.
I see, where a cord cutter might be like, I'm throwing my TV out the window, enough.
Exactly.
Cord shavers just want to save a little cash.
Exactly. So the cord cutting is actually, you know, maybe 10% households in the United States are cord cutters, although something like 40% of U.S. TV households have said that they've thought about cord cutting. They just haven't done it yet. And these streaming video on demand services now reach about a quarter of between a quarter and a third of U.S. households. So, you know, it's a long trend, and I think we're clearly heading in a specific direction. But as we were talking about with the Verizon thing, it's impossible for people to get exactly what they want or even close to what they want without cobbling together multiple things. Some premium channels, some basic cable, some online streaming services, some of which are paid, some of which are free, maybe some Pirate Bay thrown in there somewhere. It's the user, the viewer, is really having to work hard these days to get something close to what they want.
Well, or if you have set up your living room like me, I mean, everything that I watch is on demand streaming. Everything, unless I buy a movie on iTunes, which I do here and there. But yeah, I don't have access to anything. If it's Monday Night Football night, well, I don't get ESPN because I don't pay for cable. So it's one of those things that, I don't know, I end up watching something on Netflix that's original series that I end up going, that was pretty good. Might not have watched this otherwise. So I think that as a company, particularly Netflix, but anybody who's in the on-demand game where you can pay a monthly subscription really has a lot to gain from people like me who say, for whatever reason, cable's just, maybe it's the principle of it all, but I'm just not gonna play that game anymore. I'm not gonna pay $100 a month for all these channels that I don't watch. So you end up getting the spillover of people who might not even really want to spend that much time with Hulu Plus, and then I find all these series, and it's okay. Life goes on.
It's okay, but it's not great. You want to watch, you know, new series like, you know, Mad Men is going to be coming out again and have one of their brief seasons again. And you watch it, if you watch that on iTunes, you got to wait, you know, 24 hours, 48 hours, or whatever. Lots of times you want to go get a movie that's out there, but they don't let you rent it yet. You have to wait. And
That's
you can
true.
buy it.
Yeah, you buy it immediately.
It's not the same thing as watching it live with everybody else on Sunday night. I agree.
And again, this is the thing that bothers me about content providers and cables and other sources of content. They're always artificially creating these barriers to you getting what you want when you want it, so that they can charge you more. And they're charging you more not for a service. They're charging you more to overcome the scarcity that they in fact created, which is really, really annoying.
Yeah, we kind of actually just did this, cord shaving, as it were. You know, we peeled back we shaved our DirecTV subscription, and now we're doing more Hulu Plus, more Netflix. I mean, well, about the same Netflix, but I mean, that was possible for us because we just aren't watching a lot, period, right now. So it's not, you know, it's not like we're watching TV every single night and we can find everything on those services. We're just not using as much, you know, worth paying $80, you know, for DirecTV every month. So
right,
just made sense to peel it back now, anyways.
And you make a great point, which is that in addition to all of this stuff going on with TV, all this jockeying for position and eyeballs, you also have the internet, which is always increasingly distracting and engaging and addictive. And so it's got to be tough out there for a multi-billion-dollar Hollywood studio. Oh. It's tough out there.
I'll tell you, sometimes hours go by and I'm like, wow, I've just been sitting in silence on the internet really happy. Didn't used to be like this.
Well, speaking of giant companies, AT&T seems to have come out with an actually cool service.
Yeah, AT&T wants you to end your contract and get a new phone. Okay, so the company announced yesterday that customers who started their 2-year agreement previous to January 18th, so that was just a few days ago, can switch to AT&T Next, which will let them upgrade to a new phone after 6 months into their contract, also to a mobile share value plan, which is a month-to-month plan with no contract at all. Customers could keep their original phones. You've got a few options here. AT&T spokespeople do confirm that, or as a customer, you can say, well, I'd rather trade in my old phone that I bought on subsidy for up to a $300 credit on a new Next phone. Now, as we've talked about on TNT lately, there's definitely competition in the space. Everybody's trying to make switching over to a new plan or even jumping carriers as attractive as possible. T-Mobile announced it's going to pay early termination fees for entire families who want to switch off another carrier. Verizon lowered the time that customers had to wait before an upgrade from 6 months to 30 days. That was just news that came out on Sunday. That's if you have paid off at least half of your current phone, but that, again, applies to a lot of customers. Yesterday, Verizon introduced a cheaper $60 option for its Share Everything plan. So this is just, I mean, it's like the keeping up with the Joneses of mobile options. You know, it doesn't mean that anything's necessarily getting a whole lot cheaper for anybody, but we do have options.
It seems to be getting more flexible, and that's the part that I like. The old contract lock-in, I've always been pretty cynical about carriers who do that, burying the cost of the subsidized, so-called subsidized phone in the cost of the contract. Now they're embracing kind of the T-Mobile model where you get a phone that's kind of subsidized. It's more like a layaway plan. You get the phone right away for zero or very little, and then you make payments on that phone. It's essentially like buying an unlocked phone and getting a loan for it,
right? Sort
of. So that's kind of nice. You know, it's a way to sort of get in the door. This idea of being able to upgrade early is nice too, because you know, new devices are coming out. The new iPhone's probably going to come out earlier than we might expect. Some people are saying summer. So that's about right for people who bought an iPhone pretty recently and they want to get the whatever it is, the iPhone 6 or whatever's coming. And so, you know, it's important for people to know also that if you signed a contract after January 19th, you blew it. You'll have to wait about 20 months. But I like the trend here, and I applaud T-Mobile's desperation for coming up with all these great ideas that's driving everybody nuts.
You really can kind of thank T-Mobile for a lot of this. At the same time, yes, I understand that having more options as a consumer is good, and in some cases, as long as you do your homework, you can find a plan that ends up saving you more money or helping your family have more of a flexible plan, that sort of thing. However, it kind of reminds me of credit card companies that compete with each other for like interest rates, and it's very complicated. It really does require you to pay a lot of attention, and in many cases, they know that no one's going to do anything about it. They can just say, well, we have so many other options now. I mean, we're a very flexible company. We want you to be happy and find the plan that's best for you. Somebody like me is like, I'm just going to pay my Verizon bill, and I don't have time for all of this.
Right. Yeah. And meanwhile, it has to be said that AT&T also has really good service, and that's essentially where they're trying to get to the point where there's a level playing field in terms of what their deal is, in terms of their contracts, in terms of what the deal is for getting a phone back. You know, when you turn in your phone and take advantage of the early upgrade fee, you get to keep your phone, or they'll pay you, you know, $300 or so for that phone. Either way, they're being very flexible, and they're trying to get it to the point where they're just as flexible as everybody else, and then they come in and say, you know what, but we have better coverage. Which I think for a lot of people, that's probably true. AT&T probably does have better coverage than your average carrier in the United States. Well, here's a big question for us all to ponder. Is email on the way out? A former Facebook engineering executive named Dustin Moskovitz thinks so, according to a new piece in Wired. He founded a startup you may have heard of called Asana. Asana is kind of organized around business. It's a way to be work in groups and be communicative within a company without doing email. But Moskowitz claims that the world has reached, quote, peak email, a reference to sort of peak oil. And that's the idea that it's already maxed out and now we're on a big decline to the point where email will be completely obsolete eventually. I'm not so sure that's really true. A recent McKinsey & Company survey says email is nearly 40 times more effective than Facebook and Twitter combined. Of course, they're looking at it from a marketing point of view, and maybe if marketing is effective on email, that's one of the reasons why email is not desirable for end users. Still, it's a fact that email is growing in usage. It's both by the people who already have it, and it's growing in the number of users by something like 6% each year in the next 4 years, according to some predictions. So what do you think? Is email yesterday's technology, or has it got a future?
I wish it was, but no, not in my world. Email is still the number one way that it's the number one way of communication that I have to keep up on, or I'm neglecting my job and my friends and everything else. So it's how I get my bills. It's everything. Now, there are certain services that I think have made email more tolerable lately. Mailbox is just one of many apps that are designed to help make email less horrible. I mean, it's almost the way that they described themselves. That company has since been bought by Dropbox. But I find it's less painful to sort of go through and hit a few things as spam and just get a sense of my email overview. So we have more options than we ever had, but I don't see that changing the fact that I'm still getting a bunch of email.
Right.
I don't know, how are all of those people going to get a hold of me other ways?
Exactly. There has to be a universally agreed upon way to reliably receive information. I mean, there's something like 182 billion emails sent every day. That adds up to 67 trillion email messages sent globally a year. That's an astonishing amount, and that speaks to the universality of email, the fact that everybody has it. And we heard years ago, 3 years ago, everybody was saying, well, kids, teenagers, they don't use email, so the future is not going to have email. I think that has more to do with the fact that a lot of teenagers don't have jobs, right, and they're not in the workforce. Once you enter the workforce, you're pretty much going to be given an email address, and that's how if you don't check your email, you're pretty much going to lose that job.
In a strange way, it's kind of like cord shaving, right? Like if you're on the internet, you almost need to have an email. Whether you use it or not, you need to have an email address for so many things. So you have one. Just that right there means that everybody that's on the internet pretty much has an email address. I guess the question then is, are they using it as much as other communication methods? Maybe not, but they're probably using it in some way.
That's right, and it's useful for all kinds of things. Yeah. For example, Google has been going kind of nuts with what they're doing with Gmail lately. Last year, they rolled out this automated filtering tabbed inbox thing, which
it works pretty well.
What's great about it is that I don't use it, but what's great about it is that it solves the problem of the fact that most of the solutions, like the solution that I use, which is lots and lots of filters, I have hundreds of filters. That takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of thought, and you get false positives, and if you don't know what you're doing, you can really end up missing a lot of email. And so they made it automatically sorting it was kind of a nice way to do it. That's the other great thing about Mailbox. It's so nice to use, and so it's quick to just manage your email. That's another pleasant thing. But the most recent event that changed the way that Gmail is used is, and we reported it last week, integration with Google Plus means that somebody who can find you on Google Plus can, unless you change the settings, email you without knowing your email address. And likewise, if you're sending to somebody, if they're in your circles, you can send them email without knowing their email address. So it sounds like they're trying to get away from the email address and move it toward an identity-based thing.
Yeah.
And I think that they'll probably do that with phones too. To a certain extent, they do that with Google Plus Hangouts, which is probably going to be even closely more integrated with Google Voice. So, you know, that's an interesting change with Google's leadership there, because it sounds like they're sort of erasing the distinctions between email and social networking. And let's face it, email is just a social network. The address list you have in your email is your social.
Yeah, I think I'll start to take more stock in this whole email is dying when somebody can point me to a few successful corporations that have done away with it. And all of their workers are happy using some other forms of communication. I know that there are supplement forms of communication, but email is still, it's still just the number. It's the obvious one.
Right.
We've all got that to fall back on.
That's right. That's right. Well, speaking of email, it sounds like we got some email on our recent Google Glass coverage.
Yeah, back on Friday, we had an interesting discussion about the overturning of the woman in San Diego who was given a ticket for wearing Google Glass, and then
Cecilia Abadi. She's actually on All About Android tonight. We're having her on as a guest.
Oh,
yeah, I'm outraged. Outraged. I tried to get her on this show, and she's doing your show.
Oh,
great. Thanks a lot, Cecilia.
I didn't know that.
Come on.
Jason, you're not really supposed to poach from your own show.
I didn't know.
I didn't know.
All right, we did get it. We did get quite a bit of feedback actually from people who were weighing in on the idea. One of these emails comes from John, who says, "You were talking about Google Glass and driving laws. We don't need new laws. We just need to enforce the existing ones. There's a law against distracted driving. If you're distracted while driving, you get a ticket. It could be glass, your phone, even the radio. There's no need for extra laws."
I'm not sure I agree with that. I think that there are laws against distracted driving, but most distracted driving is like Google Glass is unprovable.
Right.
I see people putting on makeup, eating sandwiches, reading the newspaper,
shaving.
And
cord shaving.
If let's say there's an accident and the driver is unconscious and the police come to find out what caused the accident. If they see a newspaper and a sandwich and some makeup and a cell phone, they're going to blame the cell phone because there's a kind of bias against technology when it comes to distraction. Distracted driving has been around since the beginning of time, and it's really here's my, bear with me. This is my case against the technology bias about distracted driving. We've gone from a world, I don't know, 3 decades ago where nobody had a smartphone, nobody was texting, zero. And now we've gone to a world where just about everybody has a smartphone. Almost everybody is texting. Some of them, many of them, are texting behind the wheel and being distracted by their mobile phones. So you would think that all else being equal, the number of accidents would go up because we have this new, colossally distracting device that everybody has. But in fact, accidents have gone down during this period. So you'd have to show me where those additional accidents are to convince me that smartphones have made a significant dent. Now, they cause a lot of accidents. Distracted drivers using smartphones have caused a lot of accidents. But my belief is that there are distracted drivers and there are responsible drivers. And the distracted drivers would have been distracted by something else if they didn't have a smartphone to play with.
Yeah, the pretty rainbow, for example. A lot of ways to be distracted.
Exactly. And speaking of distracting cars, what was the shiniest thing at the Tokyo Motor Show and the Detroit Auto Show as well?
Yeah, the North American International Auto Show is what's happening now, but the Toyota FV2, if you're kind of into cars, you might have noticed it at the Tokyo Auto Show back in November, although it's made its first appearance, at least in North America. And the reason it's significant is it's probably the most Tron-like little single-seater electric car that you've ever seen. It's covered in mirrored material that has the ability to display digital graphics. There are cameras on either side of the FV2's capture video areas. Then they display graphics depending on what movement they see. So if you think about this, there's almost no real practical purpose with electric car battery technology really needing to, get more robust, and it being where it is right now. We're probably not going to see art installation panels on the road anytime soon, but it's a fascinating concept. It is a fascinating concept, but as we learned from the Cecilia fiasco with driving with Google Glass, it's illegal to look at a screen while driving. So if you look at this car from out your window, aren't you looking at a screen? Isn't it illegal just to be driving behind this car? Well, is it any different than when someone says, like, my dog beat up your honor student around a license plate? I mean, it's forcing you to look really carefully at something that might be going 75 miles an hour next to you. They're both annoying. It's the same thing, basically. It's beautiful art on the road, just what we need. I don't care. I want to wear Google Glass and I want to drive that Toyota. It's a Toyota, right? I don't want to get hit by an SUV in that thing. It's a little flashy.
I could see Tony getting one of these. Tony, our resident car nut. Yes, exactly. Car and motorcycle nut.
Well, that's our show, ladies and gentlemen. Please send your news tips to our email address at tnt@twit.tv or call 260-TNT-SHOW and leave a message. Make sure you upvote the stories you'd like to see us cover on our subreddit at technewstoday.reddit.com and visit our Tech News Today Google Plus community. You'll find our website at twit.tv/TNT. And don't forget, to watch our shiny new tech show, Tech News Tonight, which airs weekdays at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, and you can subscribe at twit.tv/TN2. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow.